Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of a WikiTree LiveCast. This week, Emma Macbeth, who's been taking a little bit of time off, is back with us. Yay, Emma! And we also have the lovely and very astute and local Ottawan, like me, Miss Emma. Sorry, you got you stuck on the screen there. We have Leanne Cooper, who is joining us, who is a very active WikiTreer in her own right. And she has done some presentations for our local, the FISCO, which is a British Isles Family History Society here in Ottawa. But it was interesting the first time Leanne and I met. I said, "You're Leanne Cooper." And she's like, "You're Mags Golden." And we were like, "Oh, WikiTree in the house." So that was so much fun. We actually have some other WikiTreers here in Ottawa. We were talking beforehand that we wanted to get a group together and start having WikiTree ends or whatever. We could do we could do John and Yoko.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to switch it over and let Leanne do her presentation, and we're not going to interrupt Leanne to ask her questions during her presentation, but after her presentation, please pop your questions into our chat, and we'll be glad to ask away. So, Leanne.
All right. So let me just hang on. Let me share my screen here so I can bring the presentation up. It worked before. Let's make sure it works again. Oops, I'm not at the beginning. All right. So thank you, Mags. So I first gave this presentation at my local genealogy society, as Mags mentioned. And I assumed there that people had little or no knowledge of WikiTree. So that might not be the case here. I'm sure many of the people watching this already do know a fair bit about WikiTree, but my starting assumption is that you have no knowledge of WikiTree. I think this might be also of interest for people who perhaps are looking for ideas on how to present WikiTree, introduce WikiTree to their own sort of local community groups, genealogy societies, or whatever. So feel free to steal anything I use here and use it for yourself. So I have no particular affiliation with WikiTree. I'm not a leader. I'm not even that terribly active anymore. I used to be. But WikiTree is an essential tool in my genealogy toolbox. It's one of the things. It's how I present all of my information. It's how I collect things. It's where I keep my, it is my genealogy database. It's where I keep all my info. So I've been using it for a few years. A few years ago, I had been doing genealogy for a while. I had it on a database on my computer, and I was trying to figure out what to do with all the data that I collected. Nobody in my family was particularly interested, and I was looking for a way to share it. So I was exploring different things, came upon WikiTree, never went away. So before I talk too much about WikiTree specifically, I want to back up a bit and talk about a collaborative family tree and just make sure everyone's got the same sort of concept of what is a collaborative family tree. So when people think of online trees, often they think of Ancestry. A lot of people are familiar with Ancestry, and each person has their own tree. And you can share trees, you can see other people's trees, but you have your own tree. You decide what you're adding onto or taking off from your own tree. A collaborative tree is different. It's also known as a one world tree. And we all have, it's one global tree, and we all have our branches that connect to that big global tree. So it's a similar concept to Wikipedia. There's one article for a given topic, and then people who have different information on that topic will add to that article on it. There are a few different collaborative trees out there, not too many, but there's 3 or 4 that each have their own strengths and weaknesses. But today, obviously, because it's the one I use, I'm focusing on WikiTree. So what are the advantages of a collaborative family tree? Well, it makes it really easy to share information on common ancestors, crowdsourcing information. Especially those of us in North America often have ancestors that come from another country, in my case, mostly England. So someone in England may have access to different sources, to different information than I have, and we can collaborate on those same ancestors. There's a tendency to converge towards accuracy. taking the ancestry example again, when people have their own trees. So I'm sure we've all seen mistakes pop up on Ancestry, and then those mistakes get copied, and mistakes tend to get replicated. Then if you go and fix that because you discover, oh, look, I had something wrong on my tree, well, it's all, the wrong information is already on 20 other trees. On WikiTree, because we're all working on the same profiles, there's a tendency to converge towards accuracy. If I fix that information on the profile that I created on that person, then that new information is there and everyone's going to see that same new information. So it becomes a much more accurate tree over time. It's a great way to preserve our work, like the example that I gave before. And most of the information that I put into WikiTree was a few years ago, three or four years ago, and it's all still there. And I can go back and add little bits as I get them. But the work is there for others to be able to access. And it's also a great way to network. I've met a lot of people through WikiTree, Mags being one of them, but I've met others as well. And it's a great way to meet people working on common issues or dealing with common ancestors. So what is WikiTree? So WikiTree is a free online collaborative family tree. It's designed to balance privacy and collaboration so that living people can connect on one world tree to common ancestors. You can privately collaborate with close family members on more recent ancestors. And on deeper ancestors, it's you collaborate with distant cousins who are serious about research and careful about sources. And I'm going to be talking about this several times through the presentation, that importance of sources and that importance of wanting to get things right and wanting to get the right information out there. So those who actively help grow the tree must agree with the mission and sign the honor code. And yes, honor spelled with a U because, I am Canadian. So the WikiTree Honor Code. So I'm not going to go through all of these. I do encourage you to read them thoroughly. It's not like those user license agreements that we all just click, I agree without reading. This actually has some really good stuff in there, and it really does govern how we work together on WikiTree. So the first one is we collaborate. When we share ancestors, we work together on the same ancestor profiles. Number two, we care about accuracy. We're aiming to improve upon our worldwide family tree and fix mistakes. I'm going to jump ahead to number 5. We respect privacy. We privacy protect anything we think our family members might not want public. And if that's not enough, we delete anyone's personal information. And move ahead to number 8, we cite sources. Without sources, we can't objectively resolve conflicting information. I said those are the ones I'm going to be touching on throughout this presentation, but they're all important, and I do encourage you to really read them and understand them. So WikiTree is all about collaboration, and there's multiple ways this can be done. We can work together on common profiles. You can connect with possible DNA matches. I'm doing a lot of DNA in my research right now and using those tools a lot. You can work together on projects. A project is a group of members organized around a topic or a volunteer activity. You can group profiles together in categories such as a place, an event, and collaborate with others interested in the same place or the same event. You can connect with people researching the same names as you. And of course, you can ask or answer questions in the genealogist to genealogist forum. So I'm going to focus on the first of these, collaborating on profiles. So the profile page is the central place for organizing and viewing information and sources on an individual. Each person who ever existed should only have one profile on WikiTree. And this is a really important thing to wrap your head around because it is different than the way it works on, say, Ancestry. So for example, my 3rd great grandmother, Agnes Ryder. Sure, there have been many different people throughout history named Agnes Ryder. There may have been many in the same time period in the same place. But there was only one Agnes Ryder who was baptized on December 3rd, 1794 in South Milton in Devon, England, who was the daughter of Richard Ryder and Agnes Pilditch, who married William Prowse in 1822, migrated to Prince Edward Island, Canada in the mid-1920s, had 7 children, and died in 1876. There is only one of those people who ever existed. There are about a dozen trees on Ancestry that include Agnes Ryder. Not all of this information on each of them, but they each have some bits. On WikiTree, there's one profile. If we discover a second one, then the two profiles would get merged, combining the information. Since the profile is such an integral component of WikiTree, I want to take a moment to show you what's included. First off, the header. If you look in the address bar and on the menus, the bits that are circled, you'll see that Agnes's profile is Ryder 780. Each profile has a unique WikiTree ID made up of the last name of birth and a sequential number. As well, in the profile, you can see there's several tabs, and you can see a Changes tab. Since multiple people could have edited the same profile, this is really handy. You can see who made what change when. And that's a question a lot of people have asked me about it. Well, if someone goes and makes a change, how am I going to know? Well, it'll pop up in your feed, but you can also then go look and see exactly what the person changed in the profile. Next is the data fields. This contains the basic genealogical information: birth date, location, parents' names, siblings, spouse, marriage date and location, children, death date and location. It also indicates the name of the profile manager there, circled in red, in this case, me. Well, I don't own this profile, since Agnes is not only my ancestor, she could be yours too, and if she is, please get in touch with me, because I'd like to share some information on her. I do have some control over certain functions as the manager, and any questions on this profile will be sent to me. Click on the Ancestors or Descendants buttons from here and get quick access to her family tree. In the narrative part of the profile is the biography and sources. This can include as much or as little information as you have on the person. I like to include any research questions I may have or any disputed information. It's also where you list sources with links to online sources when you have them available. I personally find the more I have information in there, the more people are likely to contact me to ask me about the information or to provide additional information if they have it. So I find it really useful to have a nice biography done for the profiles that I create. Next section is DNA connections. When you identify on your profile that you've taken a DNA test, the system will add this information to all connected profiles. So here you can see me, my mother, and my sister at the bottom, and some fourth cousins at the top. And then I can see that they've taken DNA tests, and I can check on GEDmatch and see if we indeed share DNA. In this case, unfortunately, we don't, but I have been in touch with this person, and we do have the common ancestor. Next is the collaboration section. There are several different ways to collaborate on a profile. Depending on the privacy setting of the profile, you can just edit the profile directly, or you can send a private message to the profile manager. You can put a public comment on the profile, or you can ask a question in the forum. So I want to take a minute and talk about privacy. This is the biggest concern that most people have about putting their information online. Different online trees handle privacy in different ways. In my opinion, WikiTree's approach to privacy is one of the ways that makes it stand out from other sites. On many sites, privacy is an all or nothing approach. For example, on Ancestry, you can have your whole tree private or public. On a public tree, living people are shown as private with no information shown. On WikiTree, it's a bit different. You set the privacy setting for each profile. There are 7 settings. On the most restrictive end, up at the top, there's unlisted. There's absolutely no public information. It won't even show up on a search. Next is private. The name shows up, but little else. Only someone on the trusted list can view or edit the profile. And I'm going to show an example shortly. The other end are open profiles. Anybody can view the full profile. Any member who has signed the honor code can edit it. Profiles for people born over 200 years ago, I don't know if it's changed to 100 or still I think it's changed to 100. This is an older screen capture. Must be set to open. In public profiles, anyone can view the full profile, but only the trusted list can edit it. So let's look at an example. So this is my dad. So this is a profile of my father who's deceased. I've written a full profile for him. I have information on his parents, his siblings, his spouse, his children. I have pictures of him. I have information about his life. But the information on my father also includes information about my mother, and she's still alive. So I want to make sure her privacy is protected while allowing my close family to see what I've written about my dad. So what you see here is what I see and what my family sees that I've given access to this profile. Set my father's privacy to private with public family tree. Anyone can see his tree, but they can't see his profile. So this is what the public sees. This is what, when you go onto my dad's page, profile, this is what you'll see. His full name is not provided, nor is his exact birth and death date or location. You can see he was born in the 1930s, so you know he's not the same Bill Cooper that was, born in 1850 in Arkansas. You can see that he died in the 2000s. You can see his deceased siblings, but private sister for his sister who's still alive. There's no link to my mother's profile. There's a link to me, but not to my sister's. And in place of the profile down at the bottom, you can see that there's information there and you can see what's included, but you have to ask me in order to see it. So this way I'm able to keep the information private while still having him on my tree. So pros and cons to WikiTree, and this is completely my perspective, and other people may have a very different list than I do. These are my pros and cons. First off, there's multiple ways to display and share info, and here's a couple of examples. There's the traditional ways, like a pedigree chart and a family group sheet, the things you expect to see on a genealogy site. But some are a bit different. This is one of my favorites. This is 7 generations of surnames in my tree. I find this link really handy to send to DNA matches, just to see if any names are familiar. It also helps me easily see kind of where my gaps are. The next pro is WikiTree is amazing cousin bait. Because each profile has that unique ID that I mentioned, it can be found with a Google search. If you search for Agnes Ryder Prowse, who I showed earlier, you get my WikiTree page. That's what comes up, is that profile that I created for her is what you get. And I've often had people, I've put research questions on profiles, and then a couple of weeks later or months later or years later, somebody will happen to have been Googling that person and come upon the page and have the answer and send it to me. It's fabulous. Great cousin bait. Best thing about WikiTree, in my opinion. The site is always being improved upon. There's always new features. In fact, when I last gave this presentation a few months ago, and I had to update some of the slides because the things had looked a bit different, there were new features added. A lot of the new features are suggested by the community, and there's a very strong community within WikiTree. There's also a great focus on sources. The community takes sources really seriously, and I like that. It's vital to collaboration. If we don't have a source for the information that we have no way of knowing whether this is just, made up or whether there's some actual truth to the information we put out there. Some of the cons, you have less control. I mean, collaborating with others does mean you give up total control. If you're the type of person that wants things exactly the way you want it and exactly the type, and you don't want anyone else kind of messing with the stuff you've done, well, WikiTree might not be the right place for you. And community standards might not align with how you prefer to do things, but the community standards always take precedence over your personal preference. So for example, how to deal with place names that change over time, naming standards, things like that. There are community standards that supersede your personal preferences. Again, for me, those aren't big issues, but I know for some people they are. So I'm going to end with some tips and advice. If you're just getting started, upload a GEDCOM. There's the GEDCompare, I think it's called now, to compare against the WikiTree database to see if you may already have ancestors who are in WikiTree. That's a really great place to start, especially if there are ancestors who were added a long time ago and nothing's really happened with their profiles. It's a really good way to kind of get familiar with it. However, I do caution against using that GEDCON to add a whole lot of new profiles at once. It can be overwhelming, and I think when you're first starting off, you're better off adding profiles one at a time just to get the hang of things. Don't just add names and dates. Add that biographical information and, of course, the sources. Build up the profiles and have real information in there. I think when people see a text that's been written by a real person and not just something that seems to have been pulled out of a database, they're much more likely to connect with you and provide additional information. At least that's been my experience. Explore the site, explore the menus. There are so many tools. There are so many different things. Some of them you'll use a lot, some of them you'll never use. But if you don't know what's in there, if you haven't explored, then you may be missing things that would be helpful for you. And don't hesitate to seek help. There is a learning curve. It's not always simple to figure out. There are a lot of how-to videos on the site. There's a mentoring program. There's the forum. There's all sorts of ways to get help on WikiTree. And that's it. I hope that gave you a good overview, and I am happy to answer any questions. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen here so I come back to actually seeing people.
Should we clap? That was really good, Leanne. I enjoyed that.
Awesome.
That was good.
I see you again. It was weird doing a presentation with nobody there.
There are people here. There are.
I know, but I can't see them.
Well, and everybody's cheering. Everybody's cheering right now. Getting a standing ovation.
Am I now? I'm so touched.
Oh, great. You might want to turn your volume down just a hair.
Okay.
You mentioned the forum, and I just wanted to put out there that the name of WikiTree's forum is the Genealogist to Genealogist Forum, and we call it, the nickname is G2G, so it's Genealogist to Genealogist, and that forum is great because not only do WikiTree members use that to get answers about brick walls, everybody can, anybody from the public. You don't have to be a WikiTree member to come in and ask a question genealogically about your ancestors. So that's a great thing. I wanted to put that out there. The other thing that I think one of the best points you made, Leanne, is explore. Get out and look through those menus, click through those links, and always click the back button because WikiTree is so big that you can get lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So great questions. I wanted to ask you about your WikiTree experience. And you just joined today, like right before the live cast. I think as the live cast was going live, you joined the DNA project, which actually surprised me. I thought you were a member already.
So did I.
When you said in your introduction to yourself that you're not as active as you used to be, and I wanted to get your idea about what you consider being an active WikiTreer.
When I first started out, I spent a lot of time adding new information in, adding new profiles, fixing up profiles, making them pretty, getting new information in there. And the first, I don't know, probably 6 months, even to a year, I was focused a lot on profiles. Then I spent a fair bit of time getting involved in some of the projects and working on projects, or doing some of the, doing sourcing, or doing, the data doctors and fixing errors. And I would spend a fair bit of time doing that. Lately, DNA has been sucking up a lot of my time, and I spend a lot more time on GEDmatch and on the different DNA sites than I do on WikiTree. So I use the DNA tools in WikiTree, and certainly when I'm in touch with a DNA match, I send them to my WikiTree because that's where my full sourced tree is. I have one on Ancestry, but it's just for the shaky leaves, and it's not to actually have any real information in there. So I still go I still access it a lot. We were talking, Mags and I were talking before we started, and she asked a question about one of my ancestors. Like, I don't know, let me go look at his profile and answer that, because that's where all my info is. But I've just not been as active in the forum or in getting involved in the projects as I was at one time. I'm sure that pendulum will swing, and there'll be other times that I will be active again. But what I love is I don't have to be active. My stuff's still out there gathering cousins. And people will come and add stuff to profiles, and I don't have to do it. And other people are, and I'll see, oh, look, someone had a new source for this. This is great. And it just happens without me. It's wonderful.
Well, and then you said a pendulum, and I was thinking more like how waves come and crash, and then they recede and crash. And that's a really good point, that you worked on your stuff, you kind of got your family in shape, then you started getting involved in projects, and then, oh my goodness, DNA is now big, and I need to work on DNA for my family. So you've kind of like gone back to, I'm going to work on my family stuff some more. Yeah, and now you're getting the fishing hook is set, and you're now being pulled into the DNA project. So yay for that. Your comments lead right into something else that we were discussing, is you really, really like cousin bait.
Oh, yes. Oh, big time. One example, a great example that I have, I was working on a profile of I think it was my second great-grandfather, and found that I'm a descendant of his second wife, and found that his first wife died, and found a newspaper article saying that she died 3 hours after giving birth to twins. And I was curious as to what happened to those twins, because it said nothing, there was no death records for them, but in the next census, those twins weren't with their father and older siblings. So I was really curious about what happened to those twins. When I did the profile, I asked the question on the profile, whatever happened to those twins? A couple of weeks later, I get a message someone posted on the profile. Oh, I'm a descendant of one of those twins. They got adopted by a cousin, and here's their name, and here's where you can find them on the census. And I was able to connect all of that. It was fabulous. And that's a big part of what I love about WikiTree. It's such good cousin bait, and it's such a great way to get information out there and to get new information from other people.
That's great. I don't want to cut you off. I want you to check your volume level again, please. We're getting a big echo.
Okay.
Actually, you could turn your speakers basically close to off,
but
and I can just hold up signs to ask you questions.
Okay. Wait, what happened?
Well, that's a great picture of you. While you're doing that, we're going to move on. Do you have a brick wall profile on WikiTree that you'd like to share with us and to tell us more about? You have your mic muted now, Leanne. It's one of those category 18 mistakes. Up at the top, you'll see a picture of a microphone, and it'll say mute or unmute, and you just click there. You go.
There. Are we good now?
We're good. So brick wall.
So yes, I do have a brick wall, and my brick wall is W Kirkland. So let me share my screen a bit, and I'll bring you. Okay, no, let me go back over here. I'm such a newbie at this stuff. All right, I'm going to share my screen.
Without a bit of technical stuff.
I can't hear you, so so I'm just going to talk, and then I'll come back. So Charles Kirkland is my second great-grandfather's brother, and he died on the Titanic. And there was a whole big thing written about him in Encyclopedia Titanica, including information on his parents, which are my ancestors' parents. And a lot of that information is wrong, and some of it I'm trying to figure out. So John W. Kirkland was born sometime between, say, 1802 and 1811, maybe in New Brunswick. can't quite figure out all of that. And that's my biggest brick wall that I'm using DNA to try to work through. I'm going to stop sharing and come back and put my volume up a little bit.
So
there.
you can hear me again.
So I can hear you.
That's great. And have you contacted the Titanic, whatever you said? Have you contacted them to let them know about your research?
I have not. I did some searching on the person who wrote the article, and he has passed away. So he's not reachable. So.
And what about his family members to try and get his notes on the information?
I don't know. I haven't really pursued that very much.
All right. So just real quickly, do you want to tell us what you do in real life?
Oh, there's life beyond genealogy? I work for the Canadian government. I'm a manager at Parks Canada.
She's not the manager.
And it cuts way into my genealogy time.
She's a finance person for Parks Canada.
I am.
Right. But we would love for her to manage the parks. They'd probably be free for everybody forever and not for just this year. Leanne, thank you so much. Emma, do you have any questions you wanted to ask Leanne?
No, but I did want to say that I loved how she showed what the profiles look like, both when she's signed in and when she's not signed in.
Right.
That's an excellent thing for people to see, because that's hard to explain to people.
Right. Right. Well, great. Leanne, thank you so much for being here. I just want to run down a couple of things real quick for our WikiTree community coming up. Tuesday night, that's Halloween night. We're going to have a spectacular event. Aowen and I, and possibly Julie, are going to do a reprieve of a presentation that was done in 2014. We're going to do something very similar again on Tuesday night, 9 o'clock, Halloween night, Ghosts in the Tree. So mark your calendars, be here for that. That will be an unusual and unique and scary opportunity to learn about some of the ghosts in WikiTree. Coming up on the 25th of November at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we're going to have a special presentation on one-name studies given by the chair of the Surname Society, Kirsty Gray. It's going to be a presentation focused on one-name studies with some tie-ins to how we do them on WikiTree. And so we've got another live cast coming up in December, which will be with Aowen Langhoff. It's going to be one that is one of the most requested live casts, besides the one we had today. The intro to WikiTree is one of the most requested live casts that we have, but the second most was the Adoption Angels Project. And we've tried to get that on a webcast over a couple of times, and it hasn't worked out. So mark your calendars for December the 30th for that one. I do have to announce that the live cast will be ending after the December live cast, but they will be morphing into a weekly hangout that'll be done on Wednesdays. I believe the first one coming up is November the 8th, and that will feature Julie and Aowen and I, and Emma will probably be hanging around at some point and helping out with that. So we hope to see you in the weekly hangouts after we wrap up the live cast, which will be in the end of December. And that will be the end of the WikiTree live cast. Grandma Jean's will continue to do live casts. They won't be as WikiTree centric or sponsored by WikiTree. So we'll see you Tuesday night. You probably won't recognize me at all.
No orange glasses?
I'm not going to tell. I'm not going to tell. We'll see you. Have a good one. You guys have a great day.